Welcome to today's Explainer. Now, we're going to be looking at a deeply serious, honestly, kind of hidden reality within the world of education. We so often think of teaching and academic research as these noble, highly respected professions, right? But as the source material for today's Explainer reveals, there is a historically dark cost to this calling. It's a cost that's paid in silence, in ruined careers, and sometimes even in lives. Okay, let's dive right into this. It's a pretty jarring puzzle when you think about it. What on earth could possibly connect an ancient Greek philosopher, the brilliant British mathematician who literally cracked the Enigma code, and a modern-day high school teacher in Illinois? I mean, it seems like an impossible riddle at first glance, right? Spanning thousands of years in completely different disciplines. Well, the connection is grim, but it's totally undeniable. If we slowly trace the history of intellectual repression, we see a chilling pattern emerge. Back in 399 BC, Socrates was forced to drink hemlock for quote-unquote corrupting the youth. Fast forward to 1600, Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake for his ideas about the universe. Then in 1952, Alan Turing, a guy who helped save millions of lives during World War II, was chemically castrated because of his personal life. And today, in the 2020s, modern teachers are being fired and culturally erased. The centuries change, sure, but the core mechanism remains entirely unchanged. The system has always punished and destroyed those who live, feel, or think wrongly, according to whatever the moral panic of the day happens to be. Section 1. History of Academic Repression, from the literal dark prison to the firing squad. We really have to understand the extreme end of this spectrum to grasp the gravity of academic repression. Let's look back at the oppressive realities of the Soviet era, a time when science was entirely subordinated to ideology. 400. Just let that number sink in. That represents the agonizing, brutal interrogations endured by the brilliant geneticist Nikolai Vavilov. He was arrested in 1940 simply because his evidence-based science contradicted the party line, and he was subjected to over 400 interrogations in just 11 months, before tragically dying of starvation in a Saratov prison in 1943. This was a man whose work in genetics could have saved millions from famine, but instead, he was completely destroyed. And, he definitely wasn't alone in this persecution. Consider Vladimir Benešovich, a world-class researcher of Byzantine history. He wasn't just murdered for his academic pursuits. The system was so absolute, so uncompromising in its repression, that both of his sons were executed right alongside him. An entire family literally eradicated simply for studying ancient manuscripts and holding unauthorized knowledge. The source material actually captures this whole tragedy perfectly with this quote: "When scientists are shot, the future of an entire nation dies." It's a really heavy thought. The loss isn't just the individual, is it? It's the untold progress, the unwritten books, the unmade discoveries. It is the absolute theft of a society's potential. So the crucial point here is this. Society has, thankfully, largely moved past physical executions for ideological differences. But that instinct to purge the impure, that hasn't vanished at all. It's just evolved. We've basically traded the historical physical punishments, the executions, the gulags, for a modern equivalent, digital punishment. We no longer burn people at the stake. Instead, we fire them, we cancel them, we completely erase their livelihoods with a single click. Section 2. The modern digital witch hunt. Executed by a single click. We've traded the smoky dungeons of the past for the glowing screens of the present. But make no mistake, the witch hunt mentality is alive and well. Looking at these modern cases impartially reveals a truly shocking disproportion between the supposed crimes and the consequences. Take Jeannie Hedgepeth, an educator with 20 years of flawless, dedicated service who was fired over a personal Facebook post. 20 years of career equity just gone. Or Kari McRae, fired over TikTok memes. David Polito, fired for a social media post about a political commentator. Decades of hard-earned experience are literally being wiped out overnight just because of the outrage of anonymous complainers. And here's the really wild part. In virtually all of these modern firings, there are some incredibly important common threads. No laws were broken. There was zero harm done to students. In fact, there were often absolutely no complaints from the students themselves. The firings were based purely on this subjective idea of moral inconsistency, which, let's be honest, is essentially whatever an administration or an angry mob decides is inappropriate on any given day. The Kari McRae case actually sets an especially chilling precedent here. She was fired for social media posts, specifically memes that were published before she was ever even hired as a teacher. I mean, think about what that means. Your digital past acts as a lifelong prison sentence. You can be professionally destroyed before you even step foot into a classroom. Section 3. The Legal Morality Landmine. Weaponizing Ambiguous Laws. So you're probably wondering, how is this legally possible? How can someone lose their livelihood without breaking a single law? Well, it's what researchers call a legal morality landmine. Across various global labor codes, there are these clauses allowing for dismissal due to an immoral act. For instance, we see this explicitly in Article 81 of the Labor Code of the Russian Federation, and similarly in Article 47 of the Labor Code of the Republic of Belarus. Now, these laws sound totally reasonable on the surface, right? Nobody wants immoral teachers. But in practice, they use deliberately vague phrasing. There is no clear, objective definition of what actually constitutes an immoral act, and that allows administrators to completely bypass standard burdens of proof. Honestly, the legal realities of these morality clauses are deeply flawed because there are no universal standards or clear definitions of terms like immorality or even harassment in these contexts. Internal investigations become highly subjective. Furthermore, administrations frequently just ignore high court guidelines which explicitly state that to fire a teacher, there must be actual proof of harm to the students. Without that standard, immorality simply becomes a weaponized term used to fire anyone the crowd happens to dislike. Section 4. The Global Education Crisis, the Systemic Fallout of Fear. And this brilliantly illustrates the macro-level problem we're facing. We aren't just talking about individual tragedies anymore, folks. We are looking at a catastrophic, systemic fallout. I mean, what happens to the global education system when its educators are constantly looking over their shoulders? The data is super alarming. Looking at the 2025 Academic Freedom Index, out of 179 countries surveyed, 34 countries have seen a measurable decline in academic freedom over just the last decade. Get this, Argentina experienced a staggering 29% drop in their Academic Freedom Index in a single year. This isn't just a slow erosion. In some places, it's a sudden, total collapse. It creates this massive systemic domino effect. First, you lose top talent because the best and brightest simply refuse to work under a microscope of arbitrary moral panic. Second, there's a massive plunge in initiative. Why on earth would you experiment with new teaching methods if a simple misunderstanding could cost you your career? Third, this creates a pervasive atmosphere of fear and self-censorship. And finally, degraded education quality. A terrified, self-censoring teacher just cannot foster critical thinking in their students. And what's the ultimate result of all this? 44 million. That is the staggering global teacher shortage projected by UNESCO for the year 2030. 44 million teachers are going to be missing from the system. Our source material summarizes this entire contradiction so powerfully. We fire teachers for a photo in a swimsuit and wonder why no one wants to go into the profession. It absolutely hits the nail on the head. We are simultaneously facing an unprecedented global shortage of educators while actively driving young professionals away with these archaic, digital witch hunts over their private lives. So I want to leave you with a rather provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer today. An empty chair, an empty classroom, an empty future? If we demand that our educators be flawless, one-dimensional figures entirely stripped of their humanity, their private lives, and their free thought, well, eventually there will be no one left to sit in that chair. We really have to ask ourselves, what happens to our society when we silence the very people we trust to teach the next generation? Thank you so much for learning with us today.